just having the awareness is most of it, right?
That's right.
I already know right now that I'm going to have to apologize for a lot of crap. Right now, I'm already kind of like, that's going to jack him up. Even if he's not doing that wrong, that's going to jack him up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I know that I at least want to be able to say, hey, I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to figure out what's wrong with me in this area, because I don't want you to have to walk on eggshells around me.
Yeah.
You know?
Welcome to Shaping Freedom. These conversations are about how freedom is actually formed, what we inherit, what stops working, and the choices that change how we live and lead. I'm your host, Lisane Basquiat. Today's conversation is right on time and in line. It's about something that many of us are still trying to figure out in real time. And that's, how do you build a healthy marriage and a healthy family while we're still learning who we are? My guests today are a couple, Glenn and Yvette Henry. You may know Glenn as the creator of Belief in Fatherhood, a platform that has made millions of people laugh while also showing a more honest picture of fatherhood. Through humor and storytelling, he's been challenging the idea that dads should be distant or disengaged. Yvette is a writer, homeschooling mother of 4, and the author of the devotional Release, Rest, Remain, where she invites people to step out of performance and into a deeper rhythm of faith and rest. Today, they host the podcast, How Married Are You?, where for years they've had open conversations about marriage conflict, parenting, and what it takes to actually grow together. What I appreciate about their work is that it isn't polished, it's real. They're willing to talk about the hard parts of marriage and the personal work that's required to build something lasting, which is actually how I fell upon you all on Instagram, because you were having a real conversation about something where it was like, no, I didn't like you then. It gave me pause and I stopped, because that's what we want more of. So today we're going to talk about marriage, faith, identity, parenting, and the deeper question underneath all of it, which is, what do we have to become in order to build the kind of family and relationships that we say that we want? Glenn and Yvette, thank you so much for joining me. Welcome to the show. And I look forward to what we're going to create together.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
You're welcome. So I guess, why don't we start with some context, right? How did you meet, and where were you at that time in your life?
Yeah, our Black love story starts at a step show at Point Loma Nazarene University. And Yvette was a part of the BSU there, and I was DJing as just a person trying to help out. They were doing like a little step show thing there. They invited a bunch of the
Stomp the Greek.
Yeah, Stomp the Greek. Yeah. And so we would see each other there. She would help me take my turntables, because she was just being, hospitable, I would say. Yeah. And then she would help me take my turntables to my car, and then I'd see her again at the event, and at another poetry event I was DJing. I was like the resident DJ for their little BSU program. And that was kind of it, but we didn't know it. I was trying to get at her a little bit the night of the poetry event. I asked if she had a MySpace, and she didn't, so I couldn't,
Oh, foiled.
Yeah, so then
that was some heavy rap, though. I'm surprised that didn't work.
Yeah, I know, right? That was my game. It was different because I'm from Baltimore, so the game I usually spit is like, "Shorty," from like across the street. Come here.
Oh, she was too close.
Yeah. So, we ended up. What happened? Oh yeah, so
I said I had Facebook, and then I didn't know, but he went home and created a Facebook account because he didn't have one.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's kind of funny, because when we did start finally dating, he was like, I was trying to holler at you back then when I started Facebook. And we went back to the messages, and I was just so focused on school and not boys.
Did they go over your head?
Yeah.
It just went way over my head.
But our dads had worked together for about 15 years, I would say. They both were bus drivers for NCTD. And so we didn't know that we were kind of connected, but she ended up, we kind of started dating because her god brother needed a DJ for his wedding. She was like, I know a DJ. And that's how we linked back on. Mm-hmm.
Look at her making money for the family, making sure the family was getting straight even back then. That's wonderful. When you look back at the early years of your relationship, what were some of the patterns that both of you brought into the relationship that maybe you didn't fully understand at that time?
I had big mommy issues that I didn't know was spilling onto her. So my stuff was, my mom took her aggression out on me. So whenever I did anything, it was like so that Yvette wouldn't be upset. Like, just try to appease her so she wouldn't be upset. And so whenever she would make requests or be like, oh man, one day I want to go to Germany or Paris, or I'd be like, man, if I don't do that, she's going to be pissed. You know, like it just was like a little subtle thing that I didn't even really notice.
I would say that for me, I grew up with a pretty tight-knit village. And so when I entered into our marriage, I wanted to make sure that we had something similar for ourselves. And I would say that I prioritized them in a way that was not healthy for our relationship or for our family dynamic. And that was a hard lesson to learn.
Thank you both for sharing so candidly, because I think that's one of the things that so many new couples or couples experience but don't know how to put words to. And that is, there's Glen and everything that stands in the room behind the doorway you're standing in, and Yvette, the same. And then you all as everyone, you come into these relationships with people that you care for and love very much, and you're bringing your model of the world, your reality into that situation. And without the ability to, or an understanding that there are some questions that need to be asked and some self-reflection that needs to happen, people go through these relationships being on opposite ends of the aisle without even fully understanding why or how or what it is that's really driving the bus of the relationship, which is, one person saying, well, close knit, so that's what this looks like. And another person saying, well, I need to make sure that this person is happy.
Yeah.
And then you play that out.
Yeah. And that's just one thing that we can both think of just right now.
But I'm sure there's like so many.
There's others. There's definitely, with me becoming an entrepreneur, Yvette had a little bit of,
Well, my father was also, he aspired to be an entrepreneur. And I saw the challenges that he encountered and that my mom had to endure as a result of his pursuit. And so marrying someone that was an entrepreneur was very unsettling for me, because it represented a lack of safety and insecurity that I did not want to have to deal with.
Yeah.
And then I think too, I definitely had aspirations to do amazing things, but I watched my mom do everything on her own as a single mother. So I was expecting Yvette to do more. I was so caught off guard when she was like, well, I need your help with stuff. I was like, what do you mean? You know what I mean? What are you talking about? Just because I watched my mom do everything, and truthfully, she wasn't meant to do all that stuff by herself. It was
to begin with. Yeah.
Exactly. So that was just rough. We were so rough that we're just the whole time just smoothing each other out, to kind of get to a point where we can work together.
Yeah. But it's also understandable that you step into a relationship with whatever you heard, whatever you saw.
Yes.
Whether it's positive or negative, because you're not thinking about it at that point. At that time, you're not thinking, well, do I want my wife to have to do everything by herself? You're not necessarily thinking about that. You're just thinking about what you saw and then expecting your partner to play that role out for you in a way that is that you've grown accustomed to.
Yeah.
You know? So what did marriage reveal about yourselves that surprised you?
I have a tendency to worship like my partner. Like I think I just was like, it was more, it kind of amplified what I was feeling on the inside. So also I came in with no like family, like, you know, that whole leave and cleave thing that the Bible talks about. Like I was about that 100%. Like, yeah, forget them. It's you now, you know? And I think, you know, Yvette had a harder time with that, you know what I'm saying? So I think it kind of exposed, like, you know, how we show love for one another, like how we support one another. It was very revealing, but when you don't have kids, you can kind of cheat that.
That's what I was going to say. I was like, I'm not sure that becoming a wife revealed as much as becoming a mom did.
Yeah.
And yeah, that question for me is a little bit more challenging. I'm sure there were things, but I think those things may have been amplified when we brought children into the picture. I definitely had issues with intimacy. That I would say, well, I feel like I don't even know. I guess that was like something I didn't expect to have issues with, but then I did. And then I didn't know how to overcome those for a long time.
How are you defining intimacy, Yvette? Do you mean like romantic intimacy, or do you mean in terms of being that emotional intimacy?
Sexual intimacy.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was trying to be modest.
You don't have, I'm from Brooklyn, girl. Say whatever you got to say. It's
physical intimacy. I feel like I was, what do you think? Like outside of sex, as far as my intimacy levels? Actually, I probably wasn't as like forthcoming and open and.
Yeah, Yvette had walls up that she didn't even know she had up.
Yeah.
So I didn't even know what was going on, I don't think. We were just kind of like together. And then when we weren't together, we just weren't together. And then we were together. Like, I'm saying, like, physically, we weren't in the same room. We just weren't in the same room. But like, it's, you know, to feel like this is my person, like, I don't know if we really had that in the beginning. It just was so, and I think the hard part is that we're comparing it to now, where our connection is like so much more authentic, and you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I don't know, because I've always been like obsessed with you.
Yeah, but it's not, it wasn't cute though. It wasn't like, it was a little creepy, you know? Like I couldn't escape it.
Yeah.
But she has been always kind of like, I want you. I want to be around you. What are you doing? You know what I'm saying? I'm kind of like, I'm on the toilet. Like, can I please have a little moment, you know? But yeah, I think there was something missing for sure. But I think we would discover it like later on when her walls started to come down.
Was there a moment in your relationship when you realized, you know what, this relationship's going to take a little bit of work, some inner work?
Therapy.
There are a lot of folks who can go decades in a crappy relationship. I'm sure that those listening, you all, myself, we can all think about those people, right? Where you have a relationship, you know, the relationship's not really working, but you want to stay together more than you want to part. So was there a moment when you all thought, if we want, like, we're going to have to do some work here?
I think I would like to say, I believe it's true, that we've always been intentional about our relationship. When Glenn and I first started dating, he brought up the need for a mentor couple and having someone that we would go to in order to talk through things that came up in our relationship. Though, I don't know, I guess that's more of a unit work, but not individual work.
I think it was me. I think you were seeing in me.
Huh?
I think you were looking at me like you need therapy.
Yeah. So I would say that like it took me a long time to see my own issues. I felt like it was like him and he needed to get some stuff done. But it's really crazy to say this out loud.
Okay, here we go. It's a moment.
But I feel like it was when when my fourth child was born. Would you agree? I've always been someone that's like self-reflective and, thinking through things and working on things. But I think after my son was born, I realized that I needed help doing that, like processing who I was becoming, who I was, what I was dealing with at the time. So a little bit about our story. Glenn was a primary stay-at-home parent of our oldest two sons. And then when my daughter was born in 2017, I quit my job of teaching and came home to be the primary stay-at-home parent and homeschooling mom. And then 2 years after that, right? 2 years after that, 2019, I gave birth to our son. So in that 2-year time period, I quit a job that I had aspired to my entire life. Like I had set a goal. I was going to become a teacher, ASB director. I was on my way to all the things that I wanted to become. And then I quit that. And then I became a stay-at-home mom. And it's a beautiful job. It's a beautiful honor to be able to have that position. And also it's a thankless job. It's something that you don't really get like accolades for when you're doing it. And so I think between like all the hormones and the transition home within that 2-year period, my identity started to get all like, I just didn't know who I was, what I was doing, why I was doing it. And so I realized that I was having thoughts that were unhealthy and that I needed someone to process those with. And then our marriage was also having its challenges as well. And I was like, I'm working on this thing, but it seemed like he wasn't able to see the effort I was putting in. And so I was just like, I need help. So I feel like it was in 2019 when I started therapy. And it was just a bunch of stuff, that transitions that happened in a 2-year period from quitting my job to becoming a stay-at-home mom, but not just staying home, homeschooling, and then adding 2 more kids into the mix. And we were achieving a lot of success at that time, trying to maintain our marriage and being a public figure. It was a lot.
That is a lot.
It is a lot. And so I think it was then that I finally was like, I gotta do something. I need help. I can't do this by myself.
Yeah. And I think for me, she was going to therapy and she convinced us to go to couples therapy. I went there and I was reluctant. I did not want to go.
I mean, I can hear it in the way you're describing it.
Well, the thing is, one, I didn't know if I had the time to do the work. It was because I knew I was jacked up. I'm like, I don't know. Like my mom calls and I'm like, my heart is beating fast and I'm breathing shallow. I'm jacked up. I know I got issues. I just don't know if I have time to solve them before the time runs out to this thing that we have going on. So I'm like, let me just focus on this thing and I'll get to that later. So she was like, well, let's go to couples therapy. And I was kind of like, yeah, let's, because she was getting on my nerves. You know what I'm saying? So then,
we need an audience.
I know
I call you out.
I know I got issues, but we got mad issues, right? Mm-hmm. So she's like, let's go. And I'm like, well, let's go. So then we go and we start to see a little bit of things about ourselves. And we're like, okay, I see that. But my therapist, me and him became so like I liked him so much. I was like, I'll probably rock with him one-on-one. And so we did that. He gave us a new therapist. And so I started working with my therapist one-on-one, and we got busy quick. Like it was a lot of deep work, and still is, like, residual, but it was evident to me that, you know, I had started to put my own self in a category of like I wasn't even a part of my family. I only existed for them. Mm. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't a part of the benefits that I did. I was working for them, not working with them. And so it got kind of wild then. Yeah.
I think that's a common concern for fathers and husbands, is that they, and from what I've heard in the men, and I do interview a lot of men on this podcast, and I think a lot of it is whether it's a position that a man puts himself into by himself, or kind of the relationship puts him there, where it's like, what am I here for? I'm just here to do things. Yeah. I'm just here to do things, you know, to be this figure for my family. And there doesn't seem to be a lot of room on the platform of a family for the man to also kind of participate in what it is that's happening. And I hear that a lot. I don't think it's true most of the time. I think it's really kind of the way we step into a relationship and what our expectations are and what we come to believe the other person's expectations are, you know, for each person. But that is something that I hear quite a bit.
Yeah. And I wouldn't say that I don't know how I got there, but it was like, you know, I think that there was just a point in our marriage where I had told Yvette, I was like, look, things are about to change. Like, you've been the leader of our relationship for a long time. And I'm sorry, but this has to change. You know what I'm saying? This is going to change. Especially when she decided to come home, I just was like, things going to have to shift and I have to become someone different. And so she was hearing me, but I don't think she believed me. And then who I was becoming probably was a little bit frustrating because I didn't have a lot of tact or care in my words. I just was like, hey, we're doing this. You know what I mean? And it's hard to lead a people like that, you know? It's hard to be a leader and a father and a husband. Like those things, you know, I guess I would say it's hard for me because I didn't see it a lot. You know what I mean? And so
you're creating something from scratch, something that you have to create. And in that creation process, there's like, this works, this doesn't work. Too much, too much yellow. Yeah. Put a little more green in there, you know?
Yeah, but on display as well, because we're filming it in front of the world. So that's another different thing that was happening.
Yeah. We talk a lot about the legacy that we want to leave, but what about the one that we're living in right now? I'm Lisane Basquiat. I'm a board-certified NLP expert and a legacy healing strategist. I created Shaping Freedom to help our community move from autopilot to authority. Whether it's through my podcast, the Lounging with Lisane meditations, or our signature candles and journals, I provide the elite tools that you need to heal and to lead your family more effectively. Own your evolution. Visit shapingfreedom.com. That's shapingfreedom.com. I think, and then I have a question for you about your podcast. I think, there are many people, many men, I believe, in your position, Glenn, who know that you have to get some work done. You know things aren't working, right? And and you see it in your partner's eyes. You see it in the way your children are looking at you, and they want to say something different than what you just see it in the world, reflected in the world around you. And I think that there are many men, and thank you so much for saying that out loud. There are many men who know there's something going, many people, men and women actually, who know something's going on. They know it's not working, but they imagine that the work to get to the other side is insurmountable. Or you're so busy managing your day-to-day life and kind of surviving from one day to the next and holding things together, that going out to actually do the work, the fear, I think a lot of times is that going out to do the work may result in everything kind of falling apart. But you still feel that anxiousness about, but it's not working. But if I can just get to this place before the whole thing falls apart, I'll be okay. But you're doing that from an energy of performance in a way, I think.
Yeah, I would say in addition to that, I would also say, what's left of me after I do the work.
That's the fear you're saying?
Yeah, that's another fear. That's another concern. Like what's left over, right?
Who am I without all this?
Who am I without my story of abuse? Am I still
That's
the same
right.
person? This is something that I'm holding on to because it keeps the people who hurt me away, and it keeps me staying at a distance. So if I can hold on to this, I don't really, not that I don't want to heal. I want to heal. I just don't want them back in my life regardless. The crazy thing is when I started going to therapy, like I actually felt more validated in, like, it's not that the hurt didn't go away, but the reason why I set distance is not because I don't forgive you. It's because I don't trust you. Right. And when I say, hey, I don't trust you, is that a valid reason not to want someone around? You know what I mean? Like I have to go back and think about why, what's at risk. Okay, why do I not trust you? If you come around, what will happen? What has happened? Right? Yeah. Can you promise me you won't do this again? If we have a conversation, and if you tell me I can't promise that, then I can say, oh, it's probably best you don't come around. You know what I mean? I've truly assessed the situation, and I didn't sit in my inner child and just say, I'm scared of you. I want distance. I'm afraid. And I'm trying to still protect that child. You know what I'm saying? So sometimes it's, what's left. And then other times it's like, what changes about us? Like, do I realize that I don't really want to go to church anymore? Do I realize I don't want to be married anymore? Do I realize I don't want to be a dad anymore? Like these things are part of the thing. Like if I actually do that work, it might cost me more than you're willing. Like my wife was like, yeah, go to therapy. And I know a lot of women would be like, try to get their husband to go to therapy, but then sometimes they go to therapy and then they start taking up for themselves and they kind of like, wait, man, hold on, sleep.
Not that kind of therapy. I wanted you to go to the therapy that would make sure that the world exists the way I want it to exist.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You have a podcast and it's called How Married Are You? What does that question actually mean to you?
So it actually started out as kind of a joke? Where Glenn would do something extra for me, where it was like, oh, today I clipped my wife's toenails. How married are you? And it was just kind of like something that he did in his stories, where he'd be like, I did this for my wife. What did you do for yours? How married are you? And when we started our podcast, we were trying to figure out a name for it. And one of our followers was like, how about how married are you? And so that's how it became How Married Are You? But I do think that over time, it has evolved into this beautiful, I would say, checkpoint of like, how married am I? Like, how far am I willing to go to make sure that my marriage is successful and healthy and safe and loving and caring? You know what I mean? Like, it's not just a joke anymore, but it's really like, I'm so married that I will do what it takes to make sure that I show up as the best version of myself and give my spouse permission to do the same.
Yeah. And I think that, though it started off as like a joke, the question still feels like a challenge. So we find things to do so we can remind each other how married we are.
Yeah. Sometimes I'll be like, you know what? This is going to be my How Married Are You? I'm about to do this.
What is it that, having worked on this podcast, what do you think most couples misunderstand about marriage?
Ooh. There's so much. People grow, they change. If you watch the first 5, 6 episodes of the podcast, we were a mess. I was a mess, big time. I think that's one of the biggest comments we get now is like, I'm really impressed with your growth because I didn't know y'all would last this long. Like, seriously.
And I'm surprised people stuck around to find out.
Mm-hmm.
But to piggyback on what Glenn said, one of the things we say often is who you marry is not who you end up with.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that, and sometimes that's for the better and sometimes that's for the worse. But I think that is a very important reality for people to acknowledge, is that you are marrying someone you love right now, but you have to be willing to love them at every version of themselves. Glenn often talks about being or having a master's degree in me, because he's constantly learning the different versions of who I've become.
Yeah. In addition,
and it's the same.
Yeah.
Vice versa.
Yes. And I think too, this is something we debate over, but I think being understood is overrated. So many people in relationships want to be understood. You know what I mean? And I'm just like, just tell me what you need me to do. I don't need to understand it to do it. You know, like I will do whatever you need me to do. Me understanding from your perspective isn't going to be the best thing for you. Right. Like I remember just a couple of days ago, Yvette asked, she was like, I'm having trouble teaching Anaya how to knit, because she was knitting. And she was like, maybe I could teach you and then you can tell me how to. I'm like, I don't want to learn how to knit. You know what I'm saying?
I don't want to be in this one.
I don't want to do that, you know? And I think for me, I'm just like, okay. And I have to be okay with saying, hey, babe, that's a solo mission. That's not something I need to be a part of.
It was research for me, because I felt like if I would try to teach him, then he would be able to communicate clearly where I was missing the instruction.
Yeah. And I would just be like, well, don't teach her to knit. You know what I'm saying? Like, try something else. But the girl's knitting now. She's knitting and she didn't need me to do it. So,
yeah. You wrote a book called Father Yourself First. What does that mean? What does it mean to father yourself?
Oh, man. As we grow up, we mature, we get into relationships, the inner child comes out, right? The struggling child that wants to be a part of something comes out, and it almost feels like you notice it more when parents have adult children, and all of a sudden they start throwing tantrums when they're not getting their way.
That's right.
Right. And so what happens is I recognize a tantrum because I've seen so many of my children go through tantrums. And I'm like, okay, cool. There's parts of me that I have tantrums with throughout the day, and I could duck off into a corner or walk outside or whatever and hide those things. But I need to deal with that. Where's the insecurity? Where's this stuff coming from? And so there's a point of like my life I was like, man, my dad, lived in California. I lived in Baltimore, right? So I only saw him in the summer times, and when we saw each other, it just was all kind of like happy as much as we can. And, so I didn't get a lot of that raising, like tough love, all that stuff. And so I had the capacity to be a good father to my children. I need that same voice. So I've reconstructed my inner voice to be the voice of myself as a father, my wife's voice, and then my therapist. And I've really been fathering myself through a lot of these conversations, a lot of these things that we're going through. And it's so often because Yvette will watch me, she'll be like, oh, I see how you did that, because I'm literally talking myself through things and telling myself, hey, you are going to be fine. This is no reason to freak out. Things happen. And, leading myself to a place of calm because that's what I need. And that's what I give to my children. So, yeah, that's what it means. But in the book, I walk through instances and moments and stories from the YouTube channel about how we stopped posting and how, my son didn't trust me and all these different things where I had to be like, whoa, because I feel myself having a tantrum here. And what happens in the future is that, our children will be adults and they would decide not to come home for Christmas. And we would sit there and we would try to figure out a way to manipulate them into feeling bad and guilty and get them to come to us And then when they get here, we treat them like crap. And so I don't want to do that. I don't want to have any of that a part of my system. So my hope is that through what I've taught myself and what I've learned through writing this book, that I'll be able to raise myself for the occasion to be the father that my children need me to be in the future.
I really commend you for that. I commend both of you as a couple for that. And he's holding up the book, Father Yourself First. Available where?
Everywhere. Amazon,
everywhere.
Barnes & Noble. Hey, you still shop at Target? At Target.
Father Yourself First. And Released, Rest, and
Remain.
Also audiobooks as well.
So Glenn wrote Father Yourself First. Yvette's book is Release, Rest, Remain. Find those books wherever you shop for your books. What I commend you on, both of you as a couple, is that you, very often people focus on what they don't have as if it's lost forever. So I didn't have the type of blank mother, father, sister, brother, cousin, uncle who provided this. And therefore, I'm going to walk through my life with that loss.
Oh.
And what I commend both of you for, and specifically relating to this book, and we'll get to the other one in a moment, is creating a space within yourself where you could confront the child inside of you enough to create and build a trust relationship, a safe relationship with that part of yourself, the young Glen inside of yourself. And that takes work for sure, but it also takes a tremendous amount of courage. And it also requires some forethought, because like you said, at some point you all are going to be looking at adult people that you raised. And for all the parents, and I'll mention parental estrangement because it is a thing that people are talking about now, like I've never heard it spoken about before, talking about what parental estrangement looks like and what happens, and what you see and hear in those individuals who are not happy with the relationship that they're in with their adult children is a total lack of awareness most of the time. What you don't hear is, you know what, I kind of messed that up, or I was healing, or I was growing. And some of that, while I was in the laboratory of my life, spilled onto my children. So I'm going to acknowledge that to you because I know better. So I'm going to do better. And I'm going to acknowledge that. I don't think that our children are the most captive an audience that you will ever have. They're there, just waiting for you to receiving what you're pouring in. And the process of parenting, there are mistakes that are made, right? Especially if you haven't had a chance to do your own work. But it's important. It's not the thing that you do, it's how you treat them that are affected by the thing that you do. I think any child is willing to hear, okay, I messed up. I'm really sorry. This is what happened. I'm going to fix it. That's the thing. Not that you're not completely all grown up or all healed up when you have your children, because who is? And nobody expects the job to be as as all encompassing as it is.
Yeah, I agree with that so much. Just having the awareness is most of it, right?
That's right.
It's like, hey, I understand that I put you in a position to not trust me. And I know I don't deserve your trust, but if you can give me some time, I will spend the rest of my life trying to get this right.
That's what people want to hear.
Yeah, it's very simple. The hard part is, as soon as, and this is rampant, every time I hear someone talk about this, and every time I see another person talking about this, it's always the same thing. Well, you don't understand what I had to do. You don't get it. And I'm like,
You mean from the parent?
From the parent, from the
Listen.
parent. It's just like your generation. And so I already know right now that I'm going to have to apologize for a lot of crap. Already right now, I'm already kind of like, that's going to jack him up. Even if he's not doing that now, that's going to jack him up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I know that I at least want to be able to say, hey, I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to figure out what's wrong with me in this area because I don't want you to have to walk on eggshells around me.
Yeah.
You know? And it's not difficult. It's very simple, but there's a detachment from some parental figures for sure.
Yeah. Yvette, have you also walked a journey of reconciling or reckoning with the girl within you?
Oh my gosh, yes. Yes. So from the very beginning of my therapy journey, my therapist was like, you have a wall up. And I was very resistant to that statement because we were obviously living our lives online. And then even conversations that I'd have with people one-on-one, I was always very open and let people in and was very honest about what I'm walking through and the challenges I'm navigating. And she was like, well, walls are not just to keep people out. She's like, walls are also built to maintain a structure.
Yeah.
And when she said that, it resonated with me in a way that I still carry with me today. And so I feel like the work I began doing was deeper, and I began to see the wall come down. And on the other side of the wall was little Yvette. And she was waiting to be seen. She was waiting to be heard. She was waiting to be acknowledged in the trauma that she had experienced. There was a lot there. And so now I feel like I live, on my desk, I have a picture of me as a little girl framed because I live in such a way that I want her to feel safe. I want her to feel seen and to feel heard. But yeah, I've most definitely walked a very similar journey.
And you know that you're walking the journey.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing. There are so many folks who would say, I am online and I'm great in a one-on-one conversation. That's okay. I don't have the thing that you're saying, but the fact that you're both willing to do the vulnerable work of looking at yourselves and looking in the mirror and being willing to be open and to change and shift and grow. And I'll say it just based on what you've shared, there are things that your children will never have to experience.
Yes.
Because of the work that you both have done collectively as a unit and individually as people.
Yeah.
There are things that they will things that maybe that you're working through and that are very real when you think about your own life, even if they touched some of it in their younger years. But I get the impression your children are young. I know they're younger than my children. My children are grown as heck. And there are things that because you're doing this work and sharing with each other and being the friends to each other that you are, that your children will never, you've released it.
Yeah.
And that's the work, right? Even if we don't understand it in the moment, the work it's like a lot of folks literally take the shovel and they take the crap from before and they just move it over into that new generation, right? And so you become a pass-through generation when you do that. You're just moving things from one generation to the next. But the bravery involved in stopping to say, wait a minute, okay, these 10 things are fantastic. I like these things, but I'm going to leave these 2 or 3 things behind because I don't want that, you know? Bravo for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yvette, your devotional focuses on the idea of abiding instead of striving. What makes that message important to you, and what does that mean to you?
I think that with that whole analogy of having the wall up to maintain a structure, that takes effort. It requires a lot of strength that I'm not necessarily expected to have. And so for me, a lot of my life over the past 5+ years has been giving myself permission to leave things in the hand of the Lord, and not try to do the things that He never asked me to do. I think a huge part of my frustration and exhaustion as an adult, a wife, a mother, is that I was trying to uphold expectations that were never placed on me. And I was trying to uphold an image of someone who could handle it all and do it all. And it was not serving me well. And so when I learned that I could release things, like just let them go and then rest and remain in the presence of the Lord while He did the rest, it's freeing. It still is, because I don't feel like I've mastered the rhythm, because there is always that temptation to pick things back up when you've laid them down. And so it's a repeated decision and choice to put it back down and rest in the presence of the Lord.
Let's talk about rest for a moment. How, and this is for all of the women for a moment who feel that pressure to perform perfectly in every single role that they have. And Glenn mentioned father, leader, husband, son, and all these other roles. And for women, I think that rest is, a harder thing to embrace unapologetically. And I've always had a very weird relationship with that, because I was raised primarily by my father as a single parent, and I had a relationship with my mom, and I saw her all the time. But I was raised by a father who he was a hardworking dude, and he would come in, and he would relax for a few minutes before making dinner. He would come in and he'd shower and take his time. And I never felt like he was like rushing and scrambling to do anything. And he got a lot of things done. And so I've always had this kind of juxtaposition between what I saw and what the world expects from a woman.
Yeah.
So maybe similar, but the reverse. When I was married, I've been divorced for years, but when I was married, what was interesting is that I was married to a man, the father of my children, who expected me to just do all the things and not complain. And it was because, in his lifetime, his mom, he was one of 7. And so his mom did all the things, and it was just expected, and she was tired, but it was expected. So here I am, I step in and I'm like, bro, I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, what? And so it created, a lot of tension there. And that's not why we got divorced. It was years later. But that idea of rest seems one that women have a harder time embracing without unapologetically, as I said it before.
No, for sure. I think that we as women sometimes feel like we have to earn rest. So we prioritize being productive and efficient to a point that I think we forget that we're even working to earn rest. But what I have learned personally is that when I am well rested, I show up better as a human being, not only for the people that I do life with, my husband and my children, but for myself. And so for me, that's why rest has become somewhat of a priority. And then I feel like too, like I am a woman of faith. And so rest for me is just placing my trust in God more than I'm placing my trust in myself. You know, because I feel like sometimes we think if we take a moment to rest, the world's going to fall apart, but truly it's not. And it never has. And I've seen too many people be forced to rest because of health issues or things like that. And I just think that we as women can do a better job taking care of ourselves in that way and making sure that we are operating from a place of abundance versus from a place of exhaustion.
I agree. I agree. What do you both hope that your children learn about marriage from watching you?
I think it's hard to say a blanket statement because they're all so different and they all need different takeaways. You know what I mean? But I think one of the scariest things for me with our children, I don't think I've ever said this to you, is that I think we need to do a better job letting our children know that every marriage isn't like this. You know what I mean? Because I think they see it a lot. Like, we'll be standing there talking to each other and then we'll smile at each other and then you'll hear my daughter from the corner go, "Now kiss." You know what I'm saying? Like they're
in it.
obsessed with
Yeah.
it, And so I think, like they get to see this love story, but they don't know what happens when you choose wrong, or when you give up quick, And I think they have access to those stories. But I don't know how they're going to figure out how to choose well. So that's one of the things I'm concerned about. But go ahead.
I think it's interesting. My husband and I were recently having a conversation with all four of our kids about how we are very intentional about the people we do life with, because we do appreciate good examples of a good marriage specifically. And my second son, my second born, he was like, well, shouldn't we also have see bad marriages so we know what we don't want as well? And I was like, that's such an interesting take on, it was just such an interesting insight. And I was like, oh, that's true. I do think that having seeing examples of less favorable styles of marriage is good. But yeah.
So ultimately, I want them to know that it is work.
Yeah.
It is work to forgive, trust, hope together, see someone as rooting for you instead of rooting against you, knowing you're on the same team. And that work takes time, right? It doesn't happen on day one. I remember someone telling me hey, this is how me and my wife are, and this is how you should be. And I was like, man, you guys have been married 40 years. What are you talking about? You know what I'm saying? It just was we're not going to be like that on day one. And so, also it's really just y'all two. You know what I mean? As much as we want to be apart, it's y'all, and I'm hoping that they receive that. And I think they will, because of the boundaries that we put up in our lives and stuff like that. So yeah, I think those are some things.
I think values alignment is also, once I understood and I don't mean the values, family values and, religion and, not breaking the law and that kind of thing. I mean, true values that each person has, the things that are important to that person. In my experience doing this work, what I've learned and discovered is that when things don't work out, it's typically not because the other person's bad or anything like that. It's more, sometimes it is, but it's more because there's a values mismatch and a values misalignment. And so once you get clear about what your values actually are, you can use that as a roadmap for selecting the kind of work that you do, the kind of people that you interact with, and certainly the person that you choose to partner with in your marriage. Because if you go back to the relationships that didn't work out with people, places, things, decisions, it's 9 times out of 10 because one of your top values were disrespected or banged up against.
That makes sense. Yeah.
That's something, you can share with your children, that, once they're clear about their values, meaning what's important to them about relationship, about marriage, about family. If they're clear about that, you use that to help you to select your partners. And you do that from the very beginning, even when you start dating, because what you're able to then do is share what you know about yourself with that other person. And that way, if you have someone that's misaligned, you don't have to, spend time and energy with that person.
Yeah. That's good.
What would change if men took more responsibility for their emotional development?
I think that's like world changing.
Yeah, it's a big question. It's a real question.
Yeah, because essentially we're all operating out of something that has happened to us in an experience we've had. And so I think a lot less, there will be a lot less spillage on from their trauma onto other people, I think it's very interesting how we have we have just watched so many people just, nah, I'm tough. I got grit. I'm strong. you know what I'm saying? And they're like taking credit for like holding on and not breaking apart. And it's like, man, you probably should have broken apart. This should have broken you. You know what I mean? Like, it's okay for you to be weak for a season so that you can get stronger. And so I think if more men took responsibility, then I think our communities changed within an instant, because we're at least able to say, hey, I'm struggling with this. I don't know what to do about it, and I need help.
I said men, and I think I'm going to shift it to parents, no, whichever gender, because the role of parenting requires some emotional maturity.
I agree with what Glenn said. I feel like it would change generations and communities for the better if that happened. I feel like we, as a community, lack emotional intelligence, and it's such a powerful tool to have.
Who's we?
Huh?
Who's we?
I'm just saying, in general,
People.
Mm-hmm. Not you.
Well, yeah, I was saying.
Yeah. I just think that the communities would change. Oh my gosh, the impact would be, it would extend beyond anything we could probably imagine.
Yeah, because we would be safer.
Yeah.
We'd be safer spaces for each other.
Yeah. I feel like there would be so much less. There would be just for the Black community, for example, could you imagine if people outside of the Black community could see us for the way that we've had to navigate the systems that exist in America alone? Mm. You know what I mean? And I mean, I know we're talking about parents and families and all the things, but
it's all connected.
It's all connected.
What happens in the relationship with ourselves gets reflected in the relationships with other people.
Yes.
It gets reflected in our children, in our home culture and system. That gets reflected on our block, in our neighborhood, in our communities, and around the world. And I think that if there were more parents of either gender who are willing to do their work and to develop emotionally, co-parenting would change.
Yeah.
Children walking the planet believing that they're not good enough would change. we'd be better at picking partners. Like, I think everything would change.
Yes.
Because when you're on the ropes, it's really hard to get even basic things done when you're on the ropes. And when you do the emotional work, it takes you off the ropes and allows you to be in a position to actually see what's happening so that you can address it. And if it's the little child inside of you, let's address that. If it's, the way that you and your partner who love each other deeply are communicating and relating to each other, address that. If it's your inability to see your child as a human being and to treat them with the same respect and care that you do a stranger on the street, address that. But I think that there's always been a good time to develop emotionally, to mature emotionally. And if there's one thing about what's happening in the world today that I think gives us opportunity is to really see what's going on and to give us the opportunity to address it, because it's worth addressing, because our families need it. And not just us, like our kids' kids and their kids. They need it.
Yes.
And we don't do Uncle Joe any good by carrying forward his nonsense. Uncle Joe got on your nerves, but you're going to take all this Uncle Joe stuff and you're going to pour it into your children. Like, you don't want Uncle Joe there. So why is Uncle Joe there?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. I've really enjoyed this conversation with you too. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
How can we support you? I know you all have a lot going on, and we'll put things into the show notes for sure, the different platforms and all of that. But how can we support you?
Obviously,
buy these books.
Purchasing the Father Yourself First and Release Rest Remain. Also have audiobooks available as well. I think the podcast is a really solid platform for people who want to venture into marriage or are married and just trying to figure out, hey, am I doing this alone? It just feels like I'm lonely. And I think How Married Are You is a great resource. We've recently put a lot of love and care into our Patreon. And so we've been mentoring 5 couples every month or since
5 months.
Yeah, from 5 months.
On Patreon?
Yeah, on Patreon.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so we're opening up to see who else is interested. So we have a little interest thing going on. So if you go to our Patreon, you can fill out a form and see if you're interested in being mentored. And there's other couples that want to mentor couples through us. So
that's amazing.
I think mentor couples really changed our lives. And I think that's one of the things. But you can purchase, you can support, but also mentor a couple close to you, right? So if you're someone who is in a relationship and you see value in marriage, you see value in families, show the love and show up and support them by, helping them, like being a referee during an argument or something like that. That really changed a lot of our lives, I think, early on in our relationship. So, yeah.
That's wonderful.
But you can find us at howmarriedareyoupodcast.com and it'll direct you to all the things.
Yeah.
All the things. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you both so much. Thank you for your generosity in sharing your journey and what you're learning along the way with the world. We need it. We need it. We need more people who are willing to be courageous enough to put a stake in the ground to say, we're going to figure this out. We may not know all of it. We're still figuring it out, but we're willing to have you all support us and share and learn along the way and be mentored by the hard work that you both are doing and the great work, I'll say that you both are doing. Thank you so much for the work you're doing. And thank you for coming on to chat with me for a bit. And I'm so excited that you all live not too far away from me. So it'd be great to get together in person.
Yeah, we definitely getting together to just go out to eat. That'd be great.
Yeah, that's it. I run Soulful Saturdays down in San Diego. And so I'll invite you all to a Soulful Saturdays. It's for people who are accustomed. I'm from New York. I'm accustomed to being in diverse spaces. I think you all are from Baltimore, did you say?
I'm from Baltimore. She's from Oceanside.
I'm from here.
From Oceanside. Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
We appreciate you.